At the beginning of every year, I like to kind of reset my sustainable, my zero waste, whatever you want to call it, lifestyle. This helps me to take a look at what's working and what's not. Are there any new skills I could look at learning this year, or new foods I can work on making from scratch? Sometimes I really do lose sight of what's important when I get too bogged down with the smaller details, and this is when I know it's time to take a step back and look at the big picture. Each morning I like to go for a walk, just 10 to 15 minutes, to get outside and really appreciate my surroundings, because it's January and there's a bright blue sky outside. It's gonna snow in a couple of days, and when it gets super icy outside, I'm not the best at getting outside. So I'm gonna go out for a walk, and I like to use this time to either listen to some of my books, because I've now started listening to books on Libby, so they're free and they're supporting your local library, and I want to be able to do something that is giving me, something like education, or just something that's just a beautiful story to get my brain kind of ready for the day. But I also like to listen to podcasts, ones that are on like behavior change or psychology, or about the climate, about sustainability. So again, I'm furthering my education as much as possible in just small, manageable chunks. I'm still listening to The Wife, and I'm also catching up on Hidden Brain podcast episodes. So I'm gonna go for my walk now, and then we're gonna come back and do a little bit of meal prepping, because meal prepping is also something that really helps me when it comes to food waste, when it comes to planning, and just ensuring that I'm making healthy, wholesome food, but also that I'm wasting as little as possible. I'm also trying out a new sort of composting system to make use of the fact that we have a garden now, but the weather is very temperamental in Denver, so we'll see if it's kind of an experiment. But yes, gonna put on my shoes and go for just a super quick 10 to 15 minute walk. I find that this is manageable in the morning just before I get straight to work. Now, the term composting system is a very generous term for what's actually going on here. I decided, because I couldn't find a compost bin anywhere in Denver, I decided to just basically use some tubs that I could find at a hardware store. This is something that Kevin Espiritu from Epic Gardening has suggested as a really good, cheap budget option. It's a great way to start experimenting to see how long food might actually take to break down in my climate. One of the things I actually love the most about the Etique bars is that they last so long. I've been using this face bar for, it's got to be at least 3 or 4 months now, and it's only just half the size. They last a really long time, so you're really getting your value for your money. The same with these ones, I interchange them. This is the Professor Curl, so this one's more like a shampoo. This is Curliosity, the one that's more like a co-wash. And actually sometimes when I need an extra wash, I'll use both of them, but I particularly like this one. I'm also a huge fan of the lipsticks. I always use these when I'm going to a wedding or a party or an event, and it's great having so many different colors because it can really match your outfit or the kind of mood or vibe that you're going for. I also use the lip balm every single day because moving to Denver, I've said this many times before, obviously it's very dry and it's become more important than ever. I'm also going to make one of their concentrates today because we've just run out of hand wash. They have actually revamped their concentrates, so you should definitely check them out. They're trying to make it as easy as possible to choose more sustainable options. So I'm going to make this and then I'm going to start planning my meal prep because I just realized that actually tomorrow I'm going to visit my friend because she's just had 2 babies, so I'm gonna go visit her. So I won't be able to meal prep this week, but I'm gonna plan my meal prep so that when I get back, this can be a part 2 of the video. I also just wanted to add that these are so easy to travel with. Whenever I go away, I always just put them in a stasher bag because it keeps them from getting on other stuff, and that's the best way to not get them stuck or anything like that. So yeah, I always put these 3 bars in a stasher bag and travel with them. It makes it so much easier. I've also actually been experimenting with making soy tempeh, and it turned out beautifully. I decided to buy a bread proofing box because it was actually very inconvenient using the oven, and I wanted something that I could use to make fermented, plant-based yogurt, other things like natto that I'm gonna experiment with, and then also be able to proof my bread as well. So that was something I had thought about for quite a while, and I'm really glad that I did because the tempeh turned out wonderfully. So when it comes to meal prep, I'm actually a little bit bored of some of the meals that I've been making. I've been trying to think about branching out, trying new things, which is again why I've started making tempeh. And actually what I made for lunch was a Korean vegan recipe. It was on her Instagram rather than in her book. It was kind of like a spicy soup with dumplings and Korean rice cakes, tteokbokki. Some super soft tofu. I'm really liking really soft tofu at the moment, especially in stews. But I'm gonna look through this cookbook. This is actually the only cookbook that I have at the moment. And then I'm also gonna look at some of my favorites online to just try and find some, not only meals that are good to be meal prepped, but can also be frozen, and also just to get some more ideas. I'm definitely going to, when I get back from visiting my friend, I'm gonna meal prep lots of tempeh because you can freeze it up to 6 months, so it lasts a long time. Obviously using it in the bread box, I can only do 4 dishes at a time, or I might try and do 1 big one or 2 big ones using my glass dishes that I have. But I want to have a nice mix of soy tempeh and then non-soy tempeh so that I can get a really good variety of food. And also making it myself has definitely saved a lot of waste, especially now that I've figured out the best way to make it without having to use any plastic, which is really good. But yeah, I'm thinking I might meal prep maybe a lasagna, maybe a rainbow plant life curry recipe because those freeze really well. And yeah, I guess I'm just gonna do some more planning, I think. I was gonna make this a separate video, but then I decided that this is actually intrinsically linked to trying to live more sustainably, and it's things that I'm not buying this year. Over the past few years, as you know, I've been furiously saving to move abroad, to live with my husband, and to just start this kind of new life together. There have been plenty of things that I haven't bought in order to reach my budget goals and of course to live more sustainably in general. This year, however, is going to be very different. Living somewhere new and finally being able to relax has given me the clarity on what I want to be spending my money on and what I want to be saving on. Both things like work and career-wise. Also what I want to be spending my free time doing, what actually brings me joy and what's not worth it anymore in terms of actual money, but also in time. Time is something that I've been thinking more about as a currency and trying to allocate different times to different things, or different amount of time to different things. So if you watched my last video, you know that I won't be working on any of my weaknesses this year, and one of those things is I'm not going to be buying anything or spending any money on things to make me more organized or less chaotic in my nature towards work and life, because I spend usually a lot of money on stationery and calendars and pens and all these different things to help me become more organized every single year, because it's always a goal or resolution. And I've realized, as I've mentioned in my last video, this is just not my personality. It's never been the way that I worked, and I'm gonna stop forcing myself to be someone that I'm not, and stop wasting money on trying to become someone that I have no real desire anymore in becoming. In my previous jobs where I worked for other people, of course I had to be more organized, and it was quite difficult, even though I, successfully were able to work for other people and make that just work well. But now that I work for myself, I'm allowed to take an unconventional approach to work, and this is something I've worked really hard for to be able to do. And of course this may mean that I may never reach my full potential, But if I'm living in a way that works for me and brings me the most joy and does create that passion for creativity, then I think I'm okay with that. I also decided to cancel my audio subscription and I'm not buying any more books this year. This may sound a bit wild because I love reading and I have had some lofty goals in the past few years, but I've mentioned that I've started listening to Libby, so I'm supporting my library, and my library is only about 0.7 miles away, so it's very close where I can go and rent books instead. I also wanted to note though that creating a reading goal last year actually caused me more stress and to waste a lot of money. It created this stack of sad books that would sit by my bed waiting to be read, and the more pressure I felt to read them, the more I didn't want to. And so I ended up giving them away to friends, and I donated one to a library and I donated one to a thrift store, but mostly I gave them to friends and family. So it may not have been a waste for them, but it was a complete waste for me. I definitely have a I want it now mentality when it comes to books, so I think actually having a library card as well will give me that sense of patience and understanding that I can't just have things when I want them. And also the great thing about the library card is I get an allotted amount of time to read that book. And so it's a nice 3 weeks. I don't have to feel rushed, but I also don't have to feel like I have to immediately go and give that book, or I can take as long as I want. It really will be a good practice in patience. I also don't plan on buying anything else for the house. The only thing I felt I needed was a proper chair. I'd been using one of the kitchen chairs, which usually I'm fine. I have a pretty high tolerance for uncomfortable things, but Vlogmas, that really made me understand that my neck cannot take that kind of chair anymore. So that's the thing that I decided to buy, and that's the only additional thing that I'm going to be buying for this house. Everything else has been really consciously and mindfully chosen, and if something comes up, we'll put it on a list, and then in a couple months time, if we still really think that we need it, we might consider trying to find it. But we'll obviously be thrifting or buying it secondhand. But overarching, the goal or the aim this year is to not buy anything for the house anymore. And to be honest, after having to buy everything for this house, I'm really over the pressure to buy things, and I really just want to be spending my money and time on doing things instead. Which also brings me on to clothes. I bought a few layers when I moved to Denver because I really needed some layers for the cold, but apart from that, there really is nothing that I need. The way that we live here is mostly about comfort, and I do have a few nice things, but mainly they're for the summer. So I'm really gonna try and just focus on doing things and be less about the materialistic things that we have in this house. I've definitely had trouble in the past, and I've spoken about this, especially during the last few years, of trying to rectify, emotions that were particularly down with buying things. And that was definitely a period of my life where I reconsidered a lot of my values, and sometimes you just have to accept that that's what you need at that time. But it never made me truly happy, so I definitely am focusing much more on the things that I'm doing and new hobbies and getting outside and climbing, skiing, running, all those kinds of things. So where will my money be going instead? Well, I would like to buy a house in the future at some point. I don't believe that it's going to be a goal that's going to be achieved in the next, 3 to 5 years. So money will always be put aside for things like that. But again, now that I live in the US, my expenses have really gone through the roof. So everything's more expensive: healthcare, dental care, eye care, all of that kind of stuff that I have to take into consideration. I even have to pay an additional $233 just because I have a foreign license for driving. I was also very naive thinking that Denver was walkable and very cyclable. And to be honest, in our neighborhood, it absolutely is. But what I think is a 15 to 20 minute drive, it took me 2 hours to walk it. So definitely learning that and understanding that there are going to be many times where I'm going to have to drive instead of being able to walk or cycle. So needless to say, I'm going to be much more conservative with money, and I'm going to be on a much stricter budget going forwards. But it's always good to learn to budget properly and to really understand where your money is going so that you're not losing track of the small disposable income that we might have. But after all of my expenses are covered, I am prioritizing spending money only on experiences. I want to go hiking and skiing and climbing and camping and seeing as much of the US as possible. I want to visit Shelby and Madison in Austin, and I want to go on a road trip with my friend Jess. I want to meet new people and go on huge hiking trips with everyone. I want to drive to Yellowstone, and I want to go to the Sawtooth Mountains. But most of all, I just want to really experience life this year and really lean into what makes me happy and excited. So here's to adventure, to spending less, and putting our money or sustainable or personal aspirations first, and really leaning into who we truly are. I'm really over trying to be someone that I'm not, and to be quite honest, so is my bank account. Okay, so this week I'm actually going to film another video on getting serious about my budget. So if you're interested in that, then stay tuned. I've also been putting off that bowl that I showed you in October that I really need to fix, so I think I'm going to just get going with that. Okay, I really need to finish my list for my meal prep because I need to go and buy those ingredients and start doing that and start that video. So I will leave it here. Thank you so much for watching. If you missed my last video, then I'll leave it down below and above. If not, thank you so much, and hopefully I'll see you soon.